Good evening, everybody. I'm Paul Michele from Navionics, and welcome to Navionics webinar series with locating saltwater fish species. Thanks for everybody joining me here tonight. What I'm going to do is a little different here today. I am going to, if anybody's attended our seminars in the past, we've generally had a little PowerPoint that we've run through, but because we've got, a multitude of people from different areas, I'm going to give a little bit of a poll out here. I want to try to find out a little bit more about my audience tonight and try to answer the questions the best I can. I'd hate to have somebody in the west coast of the U.S. sitting through multiple things when they've just two of them out there that have simple questions. So I'm going to send out some polls. Appreciate if everybody could just click on that, give me a little bit of an idea of where you're at. And then I may ask questions as we get to it. There is an opportunity for you to kind of raise your hand and ask a question. When that comes up, I'm going to ask, hey, people in the Northeast region, let me know what you want to fish for or what you're fishing for. So you're going to see some of these polls. It's going to help me kind of customize this a little bit. What I'm going to do is use our Navionics app to try to, or a web app, to try to go through and show you specifically contours or locations. Hopefully, most of the fish and questions you're asking me, I know the answers to, but we'll give it a shot. So I'm going to send out a poll now to everyone to try to find out, again, a little bit more about you. So the first one here is, what region are you located? So I'm going to send everyone that poll. Everyone just take a look. It should show up on your screen. And bear with me here as I'm going to kind of make some notes. Quite a few in the southeast here tonight. Southeast, northeast, mid-Atlantic, Panhandle, and West Coast. 9, 48, 22, and 10. Okay, that helps quite a bit. I'll close that poll there. All right, this one's going to go out. Southeast came out as #1 right now, so I'm going to send out a Southeast poll here. If you're part of the Southeast, let me know kind of what you're fishing for here. Let's see what comes up. And again, this will give me a little guidance on where I want to start with this webinar. And a good mix tonight. Okay, a lot of inshore guys here today. All right, we're going to close that one. My next highest here was the Northeast. Again, bear with me, everyone. You'll understand why I'm doing this here in a little while. My Northeast viewers, if you take a look at this poll. Of course, if there's others here and you live in the Northeast, if you have specific interest into what we're looking at or specific fish, feel free to click on the polls. I don't mind additional information. It certainly helps this to try to squeeze this into an hour and a half. No surprise that stripers and bluefish are certainly taking the lead here. Bass and fluke. And offshore. All right. Mostly striper guys, but we got a few sea bass and fluke people. All right, my next one's in mid-Atlantic here. We'll find out a little bit about who's interested here in what in the mid-Atlantic region. Again, a lot of inshore guys, trouts, reds, and flounder. Bottom fishing. Pelagics. See a few people have a sense of humor with Jimmy Hoffa. Glad to see I've got a fun crew tonight. All right, I'm going to close that poll. A lot of flats fishing people here, a few bottom fishing, and quite a bit of pelagics. All right, and then I've got a few on the Panhandle and West Coast. I'm going to send out the Panhandle here first. I'm going to hazard a guess that I'm probably going to get redfish and trout mostly. Let's see. Yeah. No shock there. Couple cobias. Actually did pretty well on cobias today. We've got a nice cold water upwelling here offshore of Stewart. We're 4 for 7 today. Fish to 50. And then we've got kings. A little bit of snapper. All right. And the good news is the grouper and snapper kind of is universal. So we'll close that one and let's do our last one here on the West Coast. Launch that and then we're going to get right into it here. Everyone loves road jet skiers. Tuna, marlin, and yellowtail, of course. Now, apparently we've got an even stretch here between rogue jet skiers and tuna and marlin. Oop, I don't want to do that. Go back to here. Okay, and a little bit of stripers. All right, so I'm going to jump around a little bit. West Coast guys, I'm going to come to you second. So what I'm going to do is I will occasionally open this up to some questions. I'll try to do this a little bit at the end. I will try to take a look and see what questions do come up. I'll try to answer the best I can. Those that I can't answer or we don't get time for, I will have a file at the end and I'll try to email all of you and at least get you some answers. So let's start off a little bit with some, let's see, let's do the Southeast. Let's do grouper snapper. We'll start with that because that was just a very popular one and that's kind of simple all around. I've got, you know, Northeast, obviously we've got sea bass and fluke, but bottom fishing in mid-Atlantic and that and the Southeast. So we're going to start off grouper and snapper because that kind of helps me just to kind of get in the realm of things, and being on the water, I'm drinking a little Monster here today to keep me awake. So, all right, so looking at the Navionics app in particular, a lot of the areas that we look for, as you're going to hear me say a lot, anywhere you look for fish, there's always a few things you want to look at. Three most important things, I don't care what kind of fish you're looking for, is always structure, bait, and temperature. No matter what, those are the keys anywhere you fish. If you don't have the right temperature, fish aren't there. You don't have the right structure, depending on your fish, don't have it. And if you don't have bait, where are they going to go? You know, so you're always looking for these key things. So even though I'm going to point out specific areas you may want to look at, if you don't have the right temperature, and this is especially true for the West Coast guys, if you don't have the right temperature, you don't have the right bait, you're just not going to find the fish. So we're going to run, let's see, we're going to go, I'm down here in Florida, so we're just going to go out of, we'll just go out of Fort Pierce here for no good reason. So a lot of the things that we have, this is the Navionics app. What I've got here is, in case it's not familiar, we've got two selections on here. This is what we call our navigation layer. This is what we call the sonar chart layer. And hopefully this is keeping up with everybody. So what you want to look at on any of these is when you look at these kind of things, these are your contours. Okay, and in your contours, I'm going to help you with highlighting here a little bit. So on your contours, you've got this area right here, okay, which you can see, and you've got areas over here. I'm going to explain each one. So whenever you're looking for grouper and snapper, you're looking for ledges, you're looking for wrecks, you're looking for reefs, okay? In order to find those, what you're looking at in your contours right here, for example, on the first one I highlighted, that's a ledge. Anytime that you see contours very close together, this indicates a ledge in that area. Now, the key on the ledges is, you've got your undercuts, and you've got areas that they're going to kind of scoot under a little bit. Now, you can anchor on the ledge, you can drift on the ledge. A big part of that a lot of people would do is chum for them. Now, keep in mind, with these ledges, you've got tide. If you're anchoring up here, so this little spot right here, I'm going to take off my marker a minute. So this little spot right here, if I zoom in, is 48 foot high. If the tide is going this way, okay, away from here, and you anchor, all you're doing is chumming over empty space. What you're going to want to do is anchor over here in this section. Now, this is a 62 foot hole, and it's coming up to 46. So what's going to happen is your tide's coming this direction. I'll put my marker back on here. So your tide's coming this way, okay? With your tide coming in, if you anchor on this, you're going to be a little deeper and you start chumming. You're going to chum into the ledge, which is basically an upwelling right now because it's coming up. Your chum's coming up, it's going into the ledge. And you're going to pull these fish out of the ledge to your boat, and that's how you're going to catch your snapper. Reverse, if the tide's going the other way, then you're going to anchor here and you can fish directly off the ledge. Your chum's going to drop into the deep. They're going to come out and hit it. So look for tight lines and think about where your current is. That's going to help you where you're trying to fish. This area here, obviously it's a reef. Anywhere there's reefs or wrecks, which are on charts, are certainly helpful. What you've got here is a 61 foot hole. All right, keeping an eye on this is these holes often are crater holes or they're cutouts or there's ledges associated with it. So you could actually go ahead and anchor in this hole, get close to the contours. For example, this one right here, I'm going to use my little marker again. This one right here, if I anchor this way, see how the ledges here are a little bit tighter? You're anchoring in the hole and you're fishing into this. Now your snapper, again, they like ledges, they like reefs, they like wrecks. Your grouper, no different. They're just going to be a lot deeper. In particular, and again, this works really anywhere you're fishing these. Doesn't matter if you're mid-Atlantic, Florida, Panhandle. They're all the same kind of a structure you're looking for. I'm going to erase all these. If I zoom out, let's give you a quick example here of a very steep drop-off. So right here, well, that's not very steep. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So right off this area here is a very steep drop. This is actually very popular. We call Push Button Hill. For those of you that were on here that mentioned tuna and pelagics offshore, this area is an area off of Stewart that we fish a lot of blackfin tuna. Reason this area is extremely popular, and when you're looking for tunas or any offshore species, you're looking for lumps, you're looking for canyons, and again, you're looking for ledges. A lot of that also pertains to your water temperatures. So again, I'm going to look more specifically to the West Coast guys. Where you have temperature breaks and you can match it up with contours and you can throw bait on there, you've got a potential home run. And that's where anybody that's looking at the Rolfs charts, the Hilton charts, people that are able to get a hold of even the chlorophyll levels for clarity, they're looking for those temperature breaks. And when you can find a break, a temperature break with a contour, you're maximizing your opportunities to catch more fish. So on this particular area here is a ledge. You've got 400, or actually about 400 feet off of here, coming up to 256. So what happens? This creates a big upwelling. Wahoo will also certain around this. If anybody's here looking for wahoo, causes a big upwelling, and this creates a lot of turmoil in the bait, creates a lot more oxygen, and you're going to have a lot of fish that'll go around this. Now, with the ledges, again, it can be deep enough for grouper. There's snowy grouper here, for example. You can fish these tight ledges in deep water. Again, you're going to need heavier weights to get down there. That can be a whole nother seminar in itself on different rigs we could tie. But you're looking for this kind of structure. You can see even right here, I'll put my marker out a little bit, even this little point that sticks out, or even right here. These little edges, anytime you've got current, creates eddies. So the current is generally here running this way, okay? So it's running. I'm going to draw my little arrow. I feel like John Madden. We've got our little arrow here. Current's coming in, and it's made a little cutout in this. So this is a little swath, has an eddy. A lot of times bait gets packed into here. There might be sailfish sitting here. There could be mahi. Your tuna are generally running along here, because this is what happens is your current comes up, it hits here, it pushes the bait up, and that's where your fish are gonna be sitting. So whenever you're offshore, you want to find any kind of these eddies. There's another one here. Let me erase my highlights here. I believe. Okay, let's zoom down a minute here. I want to show you another example. Okay, so here, another example. Now this is out in the middle of nowhere, but see this little eddy point that sticks out a little bit. This little spot becomes a bar. The current that's ripping, again, I'm going to pull out my John Madden highlighter. Current's coming this way. It's pushing water up over this button. Okay, now over this hill, you're getting a lot of upwelled current. You're coming up to 246. You're getting an eddy. You're getting bait that gets disoriented. Every time I've come through, I shouldn't say every time, the vast majority I come through this area, I'm picking off a fish. There's usually something sitting here. So this is always going, again, back to my comments of your temperature, your structure, and bait. Now, if there's no bait and the temperature's not here, it makes it a little more difficult. So that should help a little bit with the grouper snapper. Again, the key is really about your ledges, some of your lumps, your bars, if you can find rocks. Now, rocks, when you're out looking at an area, there was an area today. I'm going to do one more quick thing. I'm going to move on to another one here. But while I was out today, we're in an area called Peck's Lake. And again, you can adjust this to anywhere you want. Peck's Lake today, we were out here, and we found these areas. There's a large hole right here that we actually call the kingfish hole. In this hole, I found a lot of boulders just moving around on side imaging and down imaging. Anything like this, I can drop my anchor ahead of and start chumming over the boulders. Boulders are going to have bait. Boulders are going to have snapper. Boulders are going to have grouper. So again, looking for structure. Here's an example also for anybody that's looking inshore where you've got a shoal right here. Okay, I'm going to get my highlighter. A little bit of a shoal and a little bit of a shoal. Right here, you've got a cut through. So what happens, you got a lot of current through here. If you're staging, if a fish is staging, you're going to stage right in this area on an incoming tide, because this is where all your bait's funneling through. It's coming off the ledges, coming off of this shoal, and they're going to stage right here. Hence, why is there a hole here? Well, when we look at it, when we look at our hole, it's coming in where all this current has been flowing in and has dug this out. And that just kind of gives you an idea of how the bottom changes. All right, so that's a little bit about grouper and snapper. I know there's a lot of redfish and trout, so I'm going to go to that a little bit. I didn't see a whole lot on snook, so let's do redfish and trout first, and then I'm going to move on to stripers and bluefish. I'm going to jump around a little bit. That way we try to keep everybody happy and nobody sits there too bored the best we can. So let's do trout first. So trout, I know my good buddy Patrick Sabile is on here a moment ago. We'll give him a shout out. Hey, Patrick. Him and I were out actually trout fishing yesterday, or Monday, I should say. You know, one of the things about trout generally run the flats. You know, you're looking on the flats for trout. Yeah, they do get on rocks. Yeah, they do get on jetties. Yeah, you can't catch them on the beach. But a lot of what the trout are looking for, and I'm going to pull up an area where we were generally fishing without giving away too many secrets here. Well, let's go over here to Sailfish Flats. Everybody knows Sailfish Flats. Okay. So we get over here, and the key, again, you're going to hear me say this over and over, is structure and bait. Your trout love grass. Bigger trout generally see them, they'll hang around docks. You'll see them over rock piles. Sometimes they'll run the mangrove shorelines. You know, we'll take a look over in Texas and some of those areas here in a little bit. But trout on the flats, at least in the southeast, they're going to look for, and I'll get to a little bit in the mid-Atlantic about the holes, but you want a little bit of current. Okay, and you generally will know when the current goes slack, you don't catch as many fish. Your trout are going to be around grass. They're feeding on pinfish. They're feeding on shrimp. They're feeding on croakers. They're waiting for that tide to come in and push these fish out of the grass. Now, You can catch them over top of the grass or laying in ambush, but a lot of times you're going to hear about people talk about potholes. Now, the charts are kind of tough to show on potholes, but I can give you a couple ideas. Let's say right here, for example. So a pothole or a sand hole, when you're running around, you're going to see grass. Within that grass, you're going to see light white, or you might see brown or a different colored green. This is your trout areas, and these are where fish will lay in ambush. And a lot of times you're going to see redfish do the same thing. They're going to lay up in these holes. I'll get to one spot I might be able to show you on the chart. But you're going to get to these holes. Now looking right here, grab my little highlighter. Okay, for example, we've got two holes that are sitting right here. Okay, now these could be considered potholes. So if you can use your imagination a little bit, we're going to erase these a minute, and we're going to say that there's grass all along here. Okay, well, in here is our sand hole. Okay, so the trout's going to lay in there. These are the kind of things you want to throw your lures over. They're going to lay in the potholes. They're going to come up. They're going to ambush it. You know, what kind of lures do you want to throw? You know, I actually prepared a little bit and I put some lures out. I mean, certainly everybody's heard of, you know, Berkeley gulp shrimp. Great product for bouncing. Redfish love them, and we'll get to redfish too. We were throwing the other day, we were throwing some stick shads. Sabile stick shad works great. Crystal minnows will also work. Any kind of top waters, depending on, you know, the time of day. Obviously, low light works better for top waters, early in the morning, later in the evening. Trout will run the edge of mangroves. Up north in the mid-Atlantic, you've got a little more area where they seem to drop into holes. This is especially true in the cold. I'm going to turn this off, erase my drawings here a minute. And I see some questions. Bear with me. We will get to questions. I'm going to jump. I want to look at one thing. I'm going to confuse everybody here. Before I go to mid-Atlantic area, I want to look for one thing to see if I can point something out for you. On a little redfish area. I don't know if it's going to show it or not, but let's see. Not really. I was kind of hoping to show you something, but this is a particular area of fish for redfish a lot, and it's very shallow. The redfish like to get, sometimes I find a lot more redfish, they're on shoals. We'll take a look at a shoal in particular over in Sarasota. And again, any of these can relate to your areas. But long extending bars, shoals, again, if you're looking up in shallow water, you know, 1 foot, 2 foot, where you can see rocks, you can see maybe scallops, you're seeing holes, you're thinking redfish are looking for shrimp, they're looking for crabs, you know, they want that shallow area. So they're going to be up pretty skinny, and you don't want a whole lot of grass. I mean, I know in Texas they get up on the mud flats and you'll see some grass that they come out of. But generally speaking, on the southeast, you're looking at a lot of redfish that get up on shallow, skinny water, that there's clams, there's oyster bars, there's shoals, there's a little bit of rock, something. Think about what they eat and where they're going to go. You're not going to generally see redfish that are in deep water. Now, they said generally because of the inlets and some of the whitewater we get up in the mid-Atlantic. So with that in mind, let's jump up here to two other areas. I want to jump up to Savannah, and I'm going to jump up a little bit to South Carolina. And then we'll come back down to a little more inshore. So if we come up here to Savannah a moment, I'm going to pick this area for no other reason than, here we go, okay. Let's go up a little bit here into a creek. So we go into a creek here. This also, by the way, if you like catching shrimp, works pretty well too. Get up into the creeks, especially in cold water. Trout love the deeper holes. You know, and this, I used to fish a lot in Savannah once upon a time, and the trout, when the water temperature got cold, the trout dumped into deeper holes. Now, when you get into those holes, they're staging. You're going to fish slower. You're going to fish jigs. You might fish live shrimp on a cork. You know, popping cork, maybe. You know, in the summertime, when they're a little more aggressive, but usually a slip cork. You know, slip corks come great because you can set your depth at 10 feet. You know, you got a 10-foot hole right here, or 11-foot hole. You can set it at 9 foot, so it's 2 foot off the bottom. Generally, I use gamakatsu, you know, a live bait hook or an octopus hook. Hook the shrimp right through the horn, send it, and you can drift through. So they get into these kind of places like this where it's a deep hole in the wintertime. Same thing on the panhandle. You know, if you're doing a lot of the panhandle, when the trout are first up in the winter, they're up into those creeks. A lot of times you're looking for the deep holes. When the sun comes out, redfish and trout will move up onto mud bars. Mud will warm fast because it's dark. So because of that dark, thick mud, sunlight will penetrate, it'll warm the mud. You'll generally find more active fish on mud because that will hold the warmth and that will create a little more active fish. Now, one of the things you want to look at too when you look at creeks, let's go to this one here. See if this is a good example. Not great. Let me find another one here. And again, I'm doing this randomly, so bear with me. Okay, this one isn't bad. All right, so let's look at this creek right here. So this creek on an outgoing tide, we're going to say, or incoming for that matter. Let's try incoming, we'll go outgoing, and then we're going to move off to the beach a little bit. So on an incoming tide, we've got a little point that sticks out. My guess, this is probably, you know, whether it's a shoal or a little bit of an oyster bar. I'm guessing it's an oyster bar because this is deep out here and it's deep here. If this was a sandbar, it'd be washed away. So I'm looking at this thinking, okay, this is an oyster bar. Good chance there's going to be redfish around it right off the bat. So on an incoming tide, remember low tide, these fish are going to drop into holes. And this does go on a flats as well. Tide goes out, a lot of fish drop in the holes, especially true on the west coast of Florida. Going to drop into a hole. We've got 10 and 12 foot holes right here. So when the tide comes in, it's pushed out and dug around this right here is our shoal or oyster bar, dug around it and dug a hole. Your fish are going to lay in here. On an outgoing tide, it's the reverse to that over here. You can see it's kind of washed out. You've got a hole. What happens is your bait is going to come out on an outgoing tide, flush down into here, and you can see how it's a deeper hole in here. This is where your fish are going to sit in ambush. In the Northeast, I know there were some people talking about flounder. We'll give a shout out up to the Northeast a moment. Your fluke, if you're doing a lot of back bay fluking, and you're looking at some of the creek channels where your spearing are coming out, your mud minnows, your finger mullet, you know, and you're using, you know, bucktails. You know, I'm a big fan of, anybody in the Northeast is familiar with the Spro bucktails. Big fan of Spro, tipping it with a little killie, bouncing along the bottom there. Very, very positive area. Flounder or ambush predators. They're going to sit, and I'm going to go up there in a little bit, but you're going to sit on the edge of channels, you're going to sit in holes, and you're going to sit at the end of creeks, just like this. Any fish, they want bait brought to them. Fish come out of the creek, fish are going to sit, you know, X marks the spot where the bait is getting brought out. So I'm going to close this out here. And we are going to run offshore a moment for bull reds a second. So, and this will pertain a little bit to sandbars. So let's see, there's St. Helena, there's the Broad River. We will get to Cobia in a little bit. Okay, so here's an area off of Savannah that I used to fish quite a bit, and this will kind of give you an idea of, it's right here, an area of what you're looking for on offshore redfish. So as we look here, where's my little John Madden? Right in here, we've got 17 foot, 20 foot depths. Okay, back in here, you've got pretty deep water, 14 foot. What happens in this area, I'm going to erase all that so I don't confuse you. So what happens, let me zoom out a little bit. So what happens in an area like this, we're going to highlight it. You can see shoaling, okay? Very dangerous area, I will warn you. But in this shoaling area, you've got large sandbars, okay? Now on the sandbars, you can see 4 foot, 5 foot. Now, by the way, if I take off the sonar charts a little bit, you can still see it, not quite as clearly, but you can still see it a little. Right in this area is where the redfish are going to come out of these channels and they're going to feed. Your big bulls get up and they feed on these bars. Again, thinking about bait and contours. Shallow water, redfish, bait, crabs, sand fleas or mole crabs, depending on where you want to call them, shrimp, mullet. Where are they? Shallow water sandbars. So that's where your redfish are coming to feed. So they're getting up on this white water. You can sight fish them, look for tail and reds. You can throw bait, anchor up on it, throw cut mullet. You could drop some jigs on them. You could try to throw some poppers. You know, we got a Sabile splasher, right? You can soft plastics. You know, you get a man's reeling shad, good bait. And again, your leader wise, you know, for reds, and we're going to get too technical on technique and leader. We can do that another time. You can always match your leader to it. I'm a big fan of Disappearing Pink Yozuri, but for big reds, I used to fish here. We used to be about 60-pound. You know, your reds inshore, you're looking at 20-pound leader. But these are the kind of shoals that you're looking for. Same thing is going to hold true if you're inshore. And I'll give you an example of this real quick. And then, as I said, I was going to go up to the northeast a little bit and jump around. Let's erase this a second. Okay. So if we go over to Sarasota real quick, a very popular area in Sarasota is called Longbar. Not really giving away any secrets to anybody that lives over in Sarasota, because they know on any given weekend there's a ton of boats usually sitting on it. Go in here. Okay, there we go. So here's Longbar. I'm going to highlight it a little bit for everybody. So Longbar is this stretch right here. And again, we're talking about redfish, and yeah, there's some trout that get on the outside edges of this for sure. But you've got a little bit of grass, speckled grass that pops up all through here. You've got little oyster bars that are in here. You've got a nice shoal right here. You've got rock piles. So you've got a lot of stuff that's on this bar. And again, a couple things is you've got current, which is certainly helpful. You've got a current coming when it comes in or comes out, kicking up the bait, moving it over the bar, oxygenating the water. So you've got a lot of redfish in there for the current, and it's moving the bait around. Again, what have we talked about a lot? Structure, bait, and temperature. Temperature, not as important here. Obviously, you don't want it freezing cold. Some of them will still be there. But, you know, you've got to have your structure. You've got to have your bait. But this gives you a little bit of an idea of what you're looking for with redfish. Again, they can be up along mud bars. They can be up along oyster bars. They can certainly be on stretches of open flat. But this is kind of give you an idea really about, you know, what you can look at a chart and say, okay, I think there's fish here. You know, there could be docks. You know, I don't need to run around a map and show you docks. Redfish will get on docks. You can fish them on docks. They're there. But you want a little bit of current. You want some movement in the current. So I'm going to jump to the northeast now to be fair. We're going to talk stripers. I know that was a popular one. And by the way, I'm very proud of everybody for staying on here, even though we're talking about different regions. We've had, I think, only one person drop off. So appreciate everybody's patience with this as we kind of run through a little bit. So with the stripers, and bluefish will generally run with them too, we're going to pick, we'll go out of Cape May here. Cape May's got a lot of different things I can talk about. So a lot of ways to fish stripers. Anybody that's up in the northeast or in that area or fish for stripers has heard about the rips. Okay, this is the Cape May rips. We take off our contours again. I'm gonna let you take a look at that while I have a sip of my monster. We take a look at Cape May. You can see why there's rips without even looking at sonar charts to start. Long sandbars, lots of holes, lots of current. Okay, generally with stripers, people will drift this area. Will they anchor? Sure they will. But a couple things, and this relates to even the rips in the northeast. Water coming out, you've got a bay or you've got an inlet. The stripers are going to look for bait, structure, temperature. Okay. In this case, it's more structure and bait. Stripers are going to sit on your ledge. They're going to sit, sometimes they'll sit in front, sometimes they're going to sit a little bit behind, depends on how strong the current is. Generally, you're going to drift over these areas. There's an area used to be called Overfalls. Let me see if I can spot where Overfalls is. It's right about 3 miles out. I haven't been up here in a while. Here's Prissy Wick. This was a very popular one. So generally, here's, again, Remember what I said about the tight lines? You've got tight lines which equal ledges. Anytime you've got a ledge, you're going to have bait in turmoil. You're going to have stronger current. You're going to have a fish highway. And I'm going to talk more about a fish highway in a minute. So here, a lot of people drift eels. They'll drop bucktails down. Again, a spro bucktail works great. A big crystal minnow, you can swim a crystal minnow. Deep divers, well, maybe not there. We'll talk about deep divers at another location. But a lot of the fishing is done here where there's ups and downs. You're going to try to get your bait on the bottom. You're going to jig it. You're going to drift your eels. But you're looking for, again, these kind of contours. See the shoal right here? You've got 17 foot, 16 foot, dropping into 24. Where are your stripers going to sit? They're going to sit right here, right on the outside edge of that. So as you drift over this lump, there they are. Now, that relates actually to what we're going to talk about if you're sitting baits on the bottom, okay? So let's delete that. So stripers, let's go up into here a minute where we have some shoaling that I can talk about. By the way, as I talk about fish highways, I mentioned that to you. If you look at this chart a little bit, fish generally travel just like we do on roads, okay? Here's all your white, all right? You've got this white. If I look at this, see how the ledges kind of drop, and it's really almost a fish highway. So fish are generally going to run your trenches and your channels. So we talk a lot about fish highways and where fish come in. So we look at this example right here. They may come up in this main channel. There's my little highlighter. This main channel through here. They may also then shoot off to the side on the secondary channel. Now, because fish run this, and actually it's going to work perfectly like I actually planned it, because fish run this, you kind of have a good idea on where they're going to go. Well, it just so happens if we time it, or take a look exactly where that might be, got to get used to removing that. Right in here, okay, if the fish are coming through here and they're crossing, what do we have right here but a point, okay? So with that point and a hole, fish are lazy, especially when it gets warmer. Fish like to sit in deep holes and let bait get brought to them. So if you want to increase your chances on stripers, for example, and you want to try to say, all right, I'm going to anchor the best opportunity, fish highways, right? So we've got our fish highway, fish going this way, fish going this way, anchor right there. Now you're chucking your bait and you're lightly chumming possibly right into where these fish are trying to make a decision. So whether they're going up the line on the right, the line on the left, you're fishing in an area where chances are they're going to come into. And your bait's going to sit in a nice hole. Now mind you, if you're fishing for sharks, that also happens to be a great spot to be. Sharks will run on sandbars and they like holes with current too, but that's a whole nother topic. We're not going to get into that one right now. So that gives you a little bit of an idea as far as how to fish drop-offs and shoals, or a lot of times they call them sloughs. Let's see if I can kind of find you something like that. I mean, this is a very popular area up here, which is called Brandywine Shoal. Brandywine, actually, look at this. You can see all the contours. This is actually a very popular weak fish spot. The weekies like this, there's a lot of rocks. There's a big shoal. Weekies like shrimp. They like bait. They like crabs. Again, why are they going to be up on this area? For all of those exact reasons. A lot of crabs, a lot of bait, a lot of information, and a lot of, word of the day, structure. So we look at this. We've got a nice drop off. We've got, there's doesn't show right here, but there's a lot of rocks around this and so forth. Here's a deep hole. Again, look at the ledge. If you were to fish in this and you were to try to chum it, I'll put on my John Madden right over here. Okay, that's a decent drop off. You got a little bit of a hole. This one swings out a little bit, but right here is your steepest drop off. This is where you're going to have a lot of bait accumulate and drop. This is one of the areas you're probably going to want to fish. And you might want to try, that doesn't work. Let's take that off. You could also even look into this. I mean, it's a little slower, okay, but you've got a little bit of a hole. So that might be another area down in here you want to fish. So that's a little bit about your stripers. You've got, here's a bank light. I mean, I could sit here and kind of pick spots all day. Oh, geez, now here's a ledge. We look at this. 24-foot hole dropping off of 16. Great spot. Trolling wise, and this could go for your bluefish or stripers, also you're looking for contours. Okay, so you're going to look for bait. You're going to look for bait, but you're going to look for contours or sloughs. So here we've got a little bit of shoaling. You can see the blue. All right, so there may be bunker that get up on here, but you've also got a channel that you can drift and you control. Trolling wise, everybody's heard of stretch 30s. So you've got man stretch 30s. You can throw a magic swimmer. You could troll a well, this is rigged for down my way here for Wahoo, but Yuzuri Shishimi Hydro Mag. But trolling, any of these edges, you want to troll your ledges with that, or you want to troll off your shoals. A lot of the bluefish will get up on the shoals. Why? Bait. Bait gets up on the shoals, bait runs the sloughs. If we look at this spot right here, actually, oh, look at that, I got a new toy, a highlighter. So we look at this little spot right here. We're in between two shoals, which is going to cause a fish highway. Dumps out. And actually, it's even better because as I look at this, let me move this a little bit. Right in here, notice how it funnels out, okay? And when I say by funneling out, you've got it like this, you've got it like this. You've got a steep ledge, you've got shoals. So where fish are going to run is in through here and in here. Your current has already even dug this out. So where you're looking for fish, where are they going to run? Your fish highways, in between these sloughs and looking at those areas. Same thing with your flounder. Your flounder, generally you're going to like deeper holes, or they're going to like on top on the edge of shoals. So if we look at flounder, for example, while we're up here, and then we're going to move over to, let's pick another area. We're going to run out west coast a little. I'll try to help you guys a little, but you guys don't have a whole lot of structure, but I'll try to give you some information. So if we take out this a minute and we look up to some areas for flounder. So flounder, go inside the inlet a minute. Flounder are aggressive, but they're also, in an area that stuff gets brought to them. So everybody sees fish when they're drifting in channels. So if you're flounder, you're generally going to sit on not so much a ledge. You might get them on the ledge. Usually it's going to be on the top part of the ledge or at the bottom, because for them to sit kind of sideways, not quite their thing. That's more grouper and snapper. Sea bass will get more on ledges. Now, I've seen a lot of sea bass on ledges and on rocks, but we're going to look at this area here. Now, we've got a nice little slow slope right here, okay? This is kind of comes up easy out of the channel. Now, this would be a nice area for flounder, and even right here, too. So, a couple things when we look at this. So, one, where's my new little toy? Here's my spotlight. So, this little spot is a deep hole. Remember we talked about where things funnel out. You've got a little creek channel that's funneling out. Let's say it's incoming tide or outgoing. Outgoing is going to go this way. It's a little bit of incoming tide. It's going to come in through here. It's probably going to form out of here. You've got a 24-foot hole. You get offshore in particular, and I could go down to spots in the Delaware Bay, but we could talk. I want to talk generally. You get a deep hole, just like a halibut or any kind of flatfish. They want to be in a hole where bait gets brought down to them. So this hole, for example, would be a good area. It's a channel, but there's a deeper hole. As that bait comes down with the current, it's going to fall into the hole. The flounder comes up, he eats it. He's got less current to fight. He's in a deeper hole. He's not having to use a lot of energy. The bait gets brought to him. He comes off the bottom, aggressively eats it. You've got him. In this area here, you've got a kind of a not quite a ledge, but where it dips out a little bit. Drifting this, you could come up the side of the channel the way my little highlighter is going here. And if I follow this, this is going to be it's not going to be as strong a current, and it's going to be steady, where you can just bounce your weight along on the bottom. And that's where your flounders are going to sit a little bit. It's not a straight chop off, but it's got a little bit of an edge. It's a little bit of a slough, and they're going to sit off that on the channels. Now, conversely, I'm going to run offshore a second here when we talk about fluke. Turn off my spotlight. Let's erase these drawings. And by the way, I haven't looked at questions, but this has been a popular one. This is being recorded, and it will be on Navionics website as well as Bass Pro's OneSource. So if you want to refer back to this, it is being recorded and you can watch it at any time. Now out here, offshore, you've got a big shoal. Now with this shoal, look at all the fish. Wow, little fish icon. See, I picked a great spot. So on the shoal, flounder will also get up on top of a bar. Again, bait comes to them, they'll sit up on top. Now, whether they're on top at high tide, more than likely as you come over this and start to fall is where they're going to be. They can all stage. They're generally, usually find one, there's more. So they're usually going to bulk up and they'll sit on top of the bar, or they might be off the edge, and you're able to drift these bars and fish. So looking at this, this is where I would probably start. I'd probably look into here a little bit. This we've got a 22 foot, let's see, versus 25. So it kind of shoals up a little bit. I'd probably fish more of this. Again, you're not going to look for super strong current for fluke. You're going to look a little more of where they can sit. They can get bait brought to them. You don't want super, super strong unless you're looking at a deep hole. So you could fish there and you're going to fish along the edges. You're going to come off the sandbar, and a lot of times they're going to sit right on the edge because they want to see the fish swim up on the shallows. And why do fish get on the shallows? Fish are on the shallows to avoid predators. The shallower they can get, generally the safer they are. So they're going to be up on the top of the bar, and as they come off the edge of the bar, that's where Mr. Fluke is sitting there waiting, and as he comes off the bar, got him. So you want to kind of start on top and drift off. Here in the south, a lot of the flounder will lay up on flats that are coming off of current. We get a lot of areas in the inlets where people fish flounder. Most of the time, holes. We'll take a quick look at a hole. But a lot of times on the flats, they're on flats that are relating to the oyster bars. Why the oyster bars? Bait, shrimp, crabs, mullet. But they'll get on the flats with a little bit of current. They'll get on the edges. So if this was in the south, they're going to sit kind of off to where this drops. Again, the current is going to pull bait off of the top of the sandbar and then into this. So very quickly on holes, and then I'm going to go to the West Coast a moment. So let's see if we can find an example of a hole without going too far. Overfalls. This is all pretty shallow stuff. Now, I mean, I haven't fished this, but if I was going to try it, I might. Right here, we've got a lot of shallows, and we've got a channel coming through. Right in here, we've got a bit of a hole, 42 foot 40. Might be a good spot to try. Where I wanted to talk about was more in the inlets. See if I can give you an example. It's a nice little, oh, I'm not looking for me. I'm trying to teach you guys. Sorry, I catch little things that give me ideas. So let's just pick an inlet and see if I can give you an example of where there might be something like that. Now, all the white here is indicating a nice hole. Okay, here's one. So if we look right here in the inlet, we've got this little section right here. Oh, where's my marker? So right in this area right here. So we've got 23 foot, 18 foot, we've got a hole. So in the south, a lot of times we'll fish these deep holes. And again, you can do the same thing on the north, but we'll fish a lot of these holes because generally we have a lot of shallower water versus the northeast. And the flounder will stage in these deeper holes. Again, current's going to bring in the bait to them. Here you can drift it, depending on how much traffic you have. A lot of times people anchor and they'll put live mullet on the bottom and a big circle hook, Gamakatsu circle hook on the bottom, and they'll wait until this flounder comes over and picks it. Flounder will move. They will swim, especially with the tide. You watch a lot of the videos, fluke and flounder will swim along. So I'm going to run out to the West Coast here a second. Erase my drawings. West Coast guys, I'm going to try to help you a little bit. But so much of the West Coast, and I'm going to come back over here to the East. West Coast, a lot of the questions I had were tuna, mackerel, or excuse me, tuna, marlin, and yellowtail, and stripers. Your stripers, over there, you could catch them off the beach. Again, you're going to look for sloughs. Anywhere there's that break in a bar, very similar to what we talked about on the Northeast. A little bit different in that you're fishing a lot more of the river and a lot more channels. But let's go over here a little bit and try to see if I can give you an idea of where you might go. Let's see. Here's LA, San Fran. Okay, so canyons, and this is for anybody even in the Northeast. Let's see if I can give you a good example. All right, here's Coronado Canyon. So we're going to pick on this. So in the canyons, again, here it's pretty simple on where your ledges are. Obviously, you see these thick, dark lines. You know, these are your ledges. A lot of cases, this is where your bait's going to build up. Let's see if I can get some spot soundings to pop up here for you without getting too far in. Well, I do. You can see how it drops off. I'm going to keep it zoomed out just for reference sake. So when we look at this, you know, you've got, I'm going to assume that this spot here is a high point. It is, so 336. So a couple things. One, we talked about earlier on blackfin tunas in Florida. This is tuna really anywhere again in the world. You've got, let's get my marker, and we'll talk about Wahoo too. But right here we've got this, which I zoomed in and saw, it's 300 foot. You've got a lump. Okay, tunas love lumps. In the Northeast, a lot of guys chunk for yellowfin tuna. Bluefin, more trolling and a lot of sight casting now, but you can chunk for them as well. But you'll get on top of these lumps and you chunk, or you get off the edges and you start chumming for them. Again, it's where you've got current and you've got bait that's there. It's structure. It's in the middle of nowhere. You know, if we zoom out on where this was and take a look and see all around, I mean, there's not a whole lot out here. There's a little bit off to the right, but this is where the structure is. This is where your bait's going to congregate. This is where, you know, fish can hide in the ledges. This is where they get pushed around. This is where they get funneled. You know, if you think about where bait is coming through and they're getting pushed in on a current, they're getting pushed in through here. It's deeper trough. They're running around. So where is your marlin going to be? Where your tuna? They're going to be looking along for the bait. Now, the reason I'm picking on the West Coast, they don't have as much structure, is because a lot of the West Coast is dedicated to temperature. If you're on the West Coast and you're listening to this when you're still here with me, the key, the most important thing you can do is have the chart and have a sea surface temperature. I don't care if it's Hilton's or who else is out there? There's a bunch. But anyway, the sea surface temperature, you got to have it, because you're looking for what will happen with sea surface temperature. You're looking for where your temperatures, your warm water kind of becomes almost like this with a ledge. When you look at the ledge, picture this yellow here, okay, as warm water, and off to the right is cold, okay? It's going to bunch up where you've got warm water pushing to cold. It's going to put your bait very tightly. Your bait is going to get packed in that warm water hitting up against the cold, where you've got a very strong temperature break. Fish aren't going to run into the cold. They like the heat. They're trying to find a way. They're going to get stacked on that temperature break. That's always your areas where you have the highest chance of being offshore and finding pelagics, is strong temperature breaks. That is where your bait is going to gather. Now, if you can put that in with your structure, like we talked about earlier, you've got temperature, which is your temperature breaks. You've got your structure, which is your canyon. And then on top of it, you're going to have your bait, which is all going to gather there because of that temperature break that's there. So bait, structure, temperature, this is kind of an area where you're going to want to troll. Now, there may be areas that are not here. There could be a temperature break. Let's erase this one here. For example, you could have a temperature break just out here. And there's going to be fish on the temperature break because there's bait. There may not be bait here. Generally speaking, though, you know, your structure is going to hold bait, but your pelagics on the West Coast move so much. You know, if you're out there and you're looking for yellowfin tuna in March, chances are they're probably not here, unless you've got the right temperature to bring them up. The Northeast, I know a lot of temperature breaks. People run out there for white marlin. They're running out for yellowfin tuna. Temperature breaks is key. The canyons as well. They're not going to generally be out in the middle of nowhere. You know, think about if you're trolling for a second and you want to be, you know, you're going to try to be out in the middle of nowhere. Are you going to troll out here, or are you going to troll here? If it's a desert, you're walking the desert, where are you most likely going to where are you going to hang out? Are you going to hang out in a deserted dunes with tons of sand and nothing for miles? Or are you going to hang out where there's some shade and water, and if you're lucky, somebody left a keg there somehow in a K2 cooler and it's still really cold, but you're going to hang out in the mirage, in your oasis. Okay, so picture that there could be desert versus not so much desert. No matter what, this is always where you're going to try to fish. All right, let me see what else I have to go through, and then I might try to do some questions here because we're about an hour. Let's see, let me delete these, erase, and let me see what else I didn't get to. I did a little bit of reds and trout and flounder. I did have questions on tarpon and sharks. I can do that pretty quick. We've got stripers and bluefish we did sea bass and fluke. We did a little offshore. Panhandle, I'm going to go to the panhandle real quick. Well, we got kings. We could talk about kings a little bit, and I did all right. So let's do quick on tarpon and tarpon sharks and a little bit on kings. So I'm going to zoom out here, and then I'm going to take a look at questions and see what questions we have and try to get through as much of those as I can. I'm going to tell you right now, if they're very specific areas, I'll do my best. But, you know, I may not have fished exactly in your backyard, but I will certainly try to do what I can. You know, you've got a lot of bays and a lot of bay fishing here in the Panhandle. You know, one area that's very popular is Dixie Bar. And for obvious reasons, Dixie Bar is exactly that. It's a bar. Remember we talked up at Hilton Head? That's where you've got a long extending sandbar where the redfish can run on the sandbars. Some areas up in here, I mean, any of your bays, trout will generally come in early on in the spring. They're going to run up in the bays. That's where they want to spawn, a little bit deeper. Your bigger trout are usually your first to come in. They're full of eggs. I don't remember your seasons in the Panhandle. I'm not sure if it's open or not, but you're going to have your bigger trout always in the spring when they're coming in to spawn. Cobia, while I'm here, and we're going to talk about kings too, Cobia, from what I've found, generally will run, if you're running the beach, are generally going to run the same contours. I've found cobia where you're running, and as you're going along, you're like, man, I just found some fish here, and it's along the break, and you follow that same break, you're going to find them. Now, it's a little bit cheating here. Let me get to, there's Pensacola. Let's get over here a little bit to Gaston. So, one of the things about the cobia is they're generally, I'm going to turn the sonar charts off a little bit here just for the moment to kind of show the bar. So the cobia are generally running along here. There's a big bar that comes out, and your cobia run the beach. Cobia are generally going to run the same contour line. They're going to be on wrecks. Right now, as I said, I quit, what did we do? 4 for 7 on cobia today. The cobia today were near a wreck. They were on multiple wrecks. We had a cold water upwelling. I talked about temperature. With that cold water upwelling, it brought the cobia up top. We were able to find them. We were able to sight cast them. So the cobia are generally going to run the same contour. If you find them at 16 foot, chances are you're going to find them 16 foot all day long. Find them at 32 foot, chances are you're going to find them at 32. Part of the keys on cobia, now you can, up in the river, when we get up to the rivers a little bit, South Carolina, the Broad River, for example, changes a little bit. There, a lot of it is fishing the channel. You know, you're fishing channels, you're fishing holes, and you're fishing, cut mullet on the bottom. You're fishing a lot of dead bait. So you can fish those on the edge of channels. But for the Panhandle here, you're looking. One of the keys to cobia that I will tell you is if you do catch your cobia, try to keep your boat moving the same direction. So if you're headed, I'm going to use this instead of my hand. So if you're headed, what was that? Let's erase those drawings. So if you're headed this way, right, and you spot a cobia right here and you hook them, and there's other cobias behind them, keep your boat moving straight as you hook that fish, because he's going to keep going forward as you try to reel him in. These other cobias are going to follow him. So you can have a chance at multiple cobia. You can hook the first one, your buddy's right next, catch that one, catch that one, catch that one. That happened today. Catch your fish, keep your boat in gear, keep leading that fish, and chances are you're going to catch a lot more. Kingfish. Now, kingfish, are probably more dependent on bait than anything. How do we even begin that? I'm going to try to keep kingfish as short as I can because there's a lot of talking I can do on kingfish. Won plenty of money on those puppies. They've helped me a lot. So kingfish, I'm going to come over here to my coast a minute. Sorry if this is driving everybody's computer nuts. I'm working a little fast here until I get to where we're going to want to go. So kingfish, for example, are, without getting too crazy, are going to look for bait. So depending on the time of year, in our spring, for example, the kingfish like to run our beach. Okay, and when they run the beach, the reason they're doing it is bait. Pods of threadfins, pods of pilchards. Same thing happens on the West Coast. They're looking for bait. They're following the schools. They're shooting in. They're eating them. Now, the keys to finding more kings along the beach is if you can find ledges. Again, we've talked plenty of times about bait, structure, temperature. Ledges, drop-offs, rocks, all that's going to hold more bait. All that is going to hold more fish. Kingfish like wrecks. Why? Bait. Kingfish like ledges that are offshore. Kingfish like reefs. Why are they on a reef? Bait. So the key to the kingfish is really where they've been. They're pelagic. They swim through. So where's the main school moving? Where's the bait? And then it's a question of where do you really want to go fish? You know, if the fish are off of, if they're running the beach, look for the bait pods. Pull up by the bait pods, fish it. But run along the ledges to try to find it. If you're running offshore, look for ledges. Look for the drop-offs. You know, go fish wrecks. Go fish the reefs. A lot of times you're snapper fishing. Throw a long bait out the back with wire on it. Chances are there's probably a king circling around out there. Your tarpon, kind of the same as almost fishing your kings a little bit. They're going to follow the bait pods. They're going to run the beach. They are going to run up in the rivers. Tarpon will sometimes get up in the nastiest lack of oxygen water that you could possibly think of. They do want bait. They're going to run the beach. You can see them cross over the sandbars. They're going to run the channels. You want to look for a lot of, an area that has intercepting creeks almost. If you've got two creek mouths that come together, tarpon may sit there. I could spend a whole lot of time on tarpon too, but I don't want to do that as I want to try to look at some of these questions here and try to answer them. But, intersecting areas, I mean, if we were to mouth of inlets are key, tarpon will usually sit outside of inlets. That's a simple enough one. Boca Grande is an inlet. Loads of tarpon, deep hole. Any of the inlets that tarpon are going to be outside of when they're migrating through, look to the beaches close to that, look to the baiting. And I can do another webinar totally on tarpon if we'd like. But let's jump to questions. I'm sure there's a billion. It's Hoffa. Thank you for somebody correcting my spelling on Jimmy Hoffa. Much appreciated. All right, so we've got Texas looking for redfish. I've touched a little bit on redfish. But in Texas in particular, I'll go take a look up in Corpus a minute here for you. But Texas, a lot of your redfish are up on mud bars. So you want to go as skinny as possible and along your rock jetties, rock piles. But we'll look at that in a minute. Florida West Gulf. Bear with me a little bit. I'm going to select inshore, but not in Florida. There's Hoffa. Salmon and halibut for West Coast. Halibut, I'll try to talk a little on halibut. Salmon, I'm going to tell you, I can talk a little bit on it. I have not done a lot of saltwater salmon on the West Coast. I've done a lot up in the rivers, in the streams and that. But as far as, and even in the coves a little bit in Tacoma, I'll try to help you with that. But that's a little tough one for me, but I'll be honest. I've riffed on the Great Barrier Reef. Whoever fishes, Dave Kinnear. Dave, I want your phone number. I want to come visit you, and we'll go play out on the Great Barrier Reef. I've dove the Barrier Reef. I have not fished it. I've caught barramundi up in the marshes, and I've done the black marlin and tiger sharks, but I'm jealous. I have not done the Great Barrier Reef yet. One of these days. So southeast bottom fishing, we talked a little bit about that. Chinook salmon, Oregon. How about a secret fishing downriggers and deep? Okay, so we'll try salmon again, northwest with riggers. Okay, deep water inshore redfish. I touched on that a little bit. Let's see, how to catch flounder in Georgia. Flounder in Georgia. That's a fun one. I think I can help you a little bit with that. Don't forget us fluke guys. I hit some of you fluke guys, but we can talk more about that, Ron, if I missed you. Any chance about salmon? A lot about salmon here today. Rockfish. Boy, those suckers are aggressive. Okay, thank you, Ryan. Tarpon. AJ's, deep water wrecks, man. Hit your deep water wrecks, hit your deep water ledges. And generally anywhere from 90 feet out to, 300. Biggest bait you can find, speed jig. You know, butterfly jigs, for example. I mean, that's, if you're not familiar with what that is, that's a Williamson speed jig. Send that down, jig that sucker. Amberjack will just be ready. You know, heavy leader, heavy tackle, jig them or large baits, but that's really related to wrecks and ledges in particular. There's one on Galveston. There's another one on halibut. Ron Nolmeyer, yes, I have fluke fished in New Jersey, actually. Snook advice. I didn't touch any snook. We'll look at snook. Did some snook fishing today, too. Pine Island Sound. How far do the trout redfish migrate from summer to winter? We'll come back to Pine Island. I fished Pine Island a bunch. Okay. It's good places for flounder in the Chesapeake. I'm looking for redfish. Not on looking for redfish. I don't write. Ray, if you can re-email me your question here, I don't quite understand what you're asking me. Ray Barker. You know, Bruce, I see Bruce Perrin here as a salmon and halibut guide. Bruce, I'm going to probably unmute you and maybe help me out here a little bit if you hang on with me, because I'm sure people have asked a lot of questions on salmon. I am not bashful. I would love nothing more than for you to, if you're still here, to jump in and help answer some of those questions a little bit. Wahoo. Okay, Eric, we can touch on Wahoo. Wahoo's pretty simple. Well, I shouldn't say simple, but at least where to look. Fishing wrecks for flounder. Do I want to be over the wreck or behind the wreck? From Scott Hoover. And best artificial for flounder fishing. Yamani, I mean, as far as best artificial, I guess if you can shoot me another message here and just let me know what area of the country you're fishing, and I can try to give you a better answer for that one. You know, as far as over the wreck, Scott, or behind the wreck, for flounder, you know, I'd have to say I'd have to look at the contour. Generally, with wrecks, my opinion is I've seen tarpon. Tarpon are generally in front of current, as well as barracudas. They generally like to be up in the front. But your flounder, and even today on Cobia, we're on the back side of the current. Sometimes your larger flounder will get up ahead of the wrecks because they'll sit there, they can hang on the bottom, and they'll be up ahead, and the bait will come around through the current. I'd always fish more the current side is the best thing I can tell you. I would not fish directly behind a wreck, because directly behind a wreck there isn't as much current. Those fish could be there, but they're going to be a little lazier. Usually I want to have a little bit of current, especially if it's going to swath around. You know, if this is the wreck a little bit and that current's coming, it's going to hit the wreck and it's going to shoot off. That's usually where I want to be, because right off the edge of that direct current is where a lot of fish will hang. You know, they're going to sit there and they're going to wait in ambush. Inshore, Louisiana, Boyd Youngblood. I can't say I know Boyd Youngblood. Name sounds familiar though. Yep, and Cobia, I see somebody just comment. I'm going to get to some of these questions here. But 90-pound Cobia on the back rep, absolutely. Cobia will circle a wreck. You know, Cobia will swim around. Nice job, by the way, as a 90-pound fish. That's a beautiful Cobia. They will swim around a wreck. They're generally not going to sit in one spot. They may, I shouldn't say that. They may sit off the edge of it, but a lot of times they'll move around. Sometimes they're going to be in the current to feed. Sometimes they're going to drop behind. You know, I've seen them swim around where I'm, 100 yards off the wreck and they happen to pop up. You know, they are a pelagic. It's just like a kingfish. You never want to sit. They're not going to have to be right on the wreck. They may swirl. So, again, what I'm telling you guys is general. Obviously, you need to play around and try some of your own. So, Bruce, are you still here? I'm going to look back here in a minute. Let's try to answer some of these that I can. Let me answer a couple if I can. So Pine Island migration. So Pine Island, as far as every fish move in and out, and a lot of it depends on the temperature of the flats. If we look at Pine Island in particular, let's see if I can give you kind of an idea. We don't show really grass on the charts. We'll show you drying areas, but we don't necessarily show you grass. But I think to answer your question, I'm going to just zoom out a little bit here for the moment. On Pine Island with your temperature, in the wintertime, your trout are generally going to be, again, in a deeper hole. They're going to move more into the grass as the water warms up. In the summertime, they're going to move out. They're going to move down deeper. Summertime, you see a lot of trout actually out on the beach. They're going to move into holes in the winter. They're going to move up into spawn in the spring. You're going to have a lot more trout in the spring up on the edges of drop-offs, on the edges of grass flats. Will there be some up in shallows? Yes. We talked about grass being key to flounder or to trout. 3-4 foot. They're going to be in a lot of the sloughs that drop off where your grass lines end. That's where your trout are going to sit. Once the water warms up, a lot of the trout move off onto the beach. You'll find large schools of trout in the late spring and summer running the beach out of Pine Island. So it's a good spot to look for them. Your redfish will come in. You will find redfish up there in the wintertime. Again, look for your darker bottom. The redfish are going to change a little, and sometimes in the spring you're going to see redfish that'll get up into, they're going to start to school. You'll find them up around docks. You're going to find them in the creeks. You'll find them up against the mangroves. They'll spread out a little. What will happen later, starting in about another month, you'll start seeing the redfish school up on top of bars. Shallow water, massive, massive schools of redfish in summer. They're going to be up there, and then as it gets in the wintertime, they're going to move off a little bit. So kind of look at your temperature and think a lot about migration. Are they spawning? Are they eating on mullet? Are they dropping out? The trout don't want to be up, just like you don't want to sit probably in 110 degree water. You'd rather kind of be in that 70, a little cooler. Fish are going to kind of do the same. And I know that's about as general as I can get. I want to try to get to a few more questions here. I'm going to start scooting over to Texas a little bit here. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about salmon in Georgia while I move over, or flounder in Georgia, salmon in Georgia. Flounder in Georgia. I didn't do a lot of flounder fishing in Georgia. What I can tell you of the flounder that I did do, a lot of it related to closer to the inlet mouths and to rocks, in particular oyster bars. I did fish, a lot of flounder will get up on the flats in Georgia. If you look towards, especially I'm trying to think the Coast Guard station, I'm trying to remember where that was, but out towards the inlet itself, you'll have a big flat area. You'll have a bay that's kind of a flat. There's not a lot of contours, but there is some current, not strong current, but some. The flounder will get in those little coves and pockets, and you can bounce little Berkeley gulp jigs. You can throw shrimp on a cork, little killies on the bottom, even squid, on a bucktail will work. But fishing those and just drifting that and bouncing along, there are flounder that'll get up on those shallow coves, that'll get up in there with rocks or a little bit of sand, but mostly a little bit of rocks in those coves. Look to some of the mouths of the creeks in Georgia. In those mouths of creeks where there's deep holes is a lot of times where the shrimp are. If you can find a creek that has a lot of holes, that's where the shrimp are. And a lot of guys that cast net shrimp go up in those creeks and they throw their cast nets on those holes. That's where the shrimp are. Find those creeks on an outgoing tide. A lot of times your flounder are going to sit at the mouth of that creek. The other thing is look for your oyster bars. As we kind of talked about earlier, the flounder will lay near those oyster bars and they're there looking for spearing, they're looking for minnows, they're looking for crabs, they're looking for shrimp. They're going to be near the oyster bars. That's what you want to try to fish. That's the best hint I can give you as far as, flounder fishing in Georgia. Texas. So Texas, and I'll tell you that I haven't done a lot of fishing in Texas. I wish I could have been there a lot more. There's Rockport, Ivanka, here's Galveston. So red fishing in Texas, I could do the cheap one and the very easy one and say, fish the jetties. There's big giant redfish there. which, yeah, there are. There's redfish by the jetties, but I'm not really telling you anything special. Certainly you've got, look at these giant holes. I mean, there's fish that are going to sit in these holes. There's fish that'll sit on top of the bars that'll be near here. Your redfish are going to run along the inlets. They're going to fish along the rocks. Again, big redfish are looking for crabs. They're looking for mullet. There's a lot of times you're going to find your bull reds. Where you're going to find other redfish, and bear with me here and try to find some, and I may not, if you guys fish a lot there, you probably know more than I do on some of it. So if I pick a spot that's not exactly where you go, don't yell at me. But, you've got a bank here. So if I look at the chart, you've got this area here, which is green. Okay, and I'm going to use this as an example. And there's shell bank, and there's pilings. This green area, in a lot of cases, is what we call drying areas. So drying areas usually mean mud. Redfish like mud bottoms. They also like the rocks. They also like scattered grass, but they really like a lot of the drying areas. And what I found on any of the redfish that I have caught in Texas is fishing that skinny water or skinny shell banks. So up on the marsh areas here, where this is the drying area, when the tide comes up, the redfish often will get up onto these areas and feed on the mud. Let me find if I can find a couple other areas here to mention. Let me see here. We've got some shoaling here. There's a shell bank. Try to find another couple examples here of where I would go. Here's Galveston West Bay. I mean, this, I look at this, to me, this would be an area I would probably look around. You've got drying areas and 1 foot. Okay, so you got drying areas with mud. Got a little bit of an island. We've got a little bit of a channel, so we've got some current coming through here, which is West Bay. You got some current coming through. You've got 1 foot. Chances are the redfish will probably get up here. You've got some mud drying areas. So redfish get up in the drying areas. They get up in the shallow waters. They can run through here. It looks like you've got some holes up in here. You can certainly fish the holes on an outgoing tide. They will stage there. But I would probably look around here just to point out as an area that looks good to me, only because of the mud and the current and the shallow water. Let me see if I can find a couple more things for you here, and then I'm going to move to the next question. Salt lakes. I mean, all these little lakes and bayous get real interesting. Look at that. That's cheating. Drum Bay. There you go. Go to redfish. Drum Bay. But here again, shallow water, drying areas. Here's a hole. Here's probably some clams and crabs and stuff like this. But, your key is really looking at current and, your mud bottom and where bait is and mullet. Looks like you can get in through here. That might be an interesting spot to check out. My experience has been more towards Corpus. Statesville, Harlington, not too far. Rockport, there we go. Kansas. I'm going to do one more here. Okay, and here's a nice bay. We'll look up into the bay. We've got 4 foot, 5 foot, shallow water up into here. I'm going to pass. I'd probably look up into here. We've got some current that probably pushes up into this section. So you've got 2 foot, 1 foot, looks like a drying area in through here. So you've got the back bays. You're probably going to have redfish that run along the edge of the mud, throwing, frogs, horny-toed frogs, that kind of stuff up on top. They certainly will eat them. And Patrick, if you're still here, is probably smiling as we were kidding about frogs before. But, it's the commotion. It's not that redfish eat the frog. It's the commotion on top. Here's a point with grass. Certainly redfish will get up on a point. That'd be a spot to look at. Let's see. This area up here is a nice little back bay. No real charting on it, but I'm guessing it's probably pretty shallow by the looks of it. And again, any kind of points or shoals. There's Middle Pass. Here's a little bayou. Here's Corpus Christi Bayou. I mean, I actually fished. Okay, I know where I'm at. I've actually fished along here and caught redfish. Fishing deeper, we caught some trout off of this, and we've caught redfish up along the drying areas. All right, let's see if my salmon guy is still here. I want him to try to join in with me a little bit. Ron's asking about fluke. Ah, good. Bruce, you're here. Let me see if I can find you on my list so we can try to talk a little bit about salmon. Hopefully you've got a mic. There's Bruce. All right, Bruce, talk to me. Let me see if I can hear you.
Can you hear me clearly now?
I got you. Great. Bruce, thanks for your help. I appreciate it.
No worries.
Yeah, give us a chime in here a little bit more, if you would, on salmon. I mean, my understanding, obviously, is I'm going to take a stab at this and think it's more about the your thermoclines and the location of your bait. And obviously, trying to find your fish, whether you're mooching or whether you're using downriggers, with that particular depth. But feel free to jump in, and I'm not bashful. Fire away.
Yeah, no, depth is definitely key. Finding that depth and not being afraid to, but how it relates to your charts is, you want to fish that structure anywhere where tide pushes bait up against structure, or deep shelves or deep drop-offs. They are very structure oriented that way. Along canyon walls, anywhere where bait gets pushed up and current runs through.
Any particular lures or anything you particularly use out there, Bruce, like more than another? Bruce, you still there on me? I was asking if you prefer.
Sorry, I lost you for a second there.
That's okay. Do you do more downrigger trolling, or are you doing more mooching out that way?
Lots of downrigger trolling out here to cover the area, and once you get into the right areas, often we do stop and mooch, and it's a little more pleasurable that way. But you can cover a lot of area by downrigger fishing, and we do fish bait when we can.
Gotcha. Perfect. So running more of the ledges and against structure where the bait gets pushed up.
Exactly.
Perfect. Bruce, thanks very much for chiming in. That was one I really didn't want to give a wrong answer to, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
All right, and Eric just reminded me about Wahoo in the Caribbean. I'm going to hit that one, and then I think we'll probably call it a night, everybody. I'll try to get to questions that I've missed, but let's talk Wahoo here real quick. So Wahoo certainly like Rex, but Wahoo really love ledges. So let's run over here to a very popular area known as West End. We talked about ledges. So I think there's a little bit of a ledge here where it looks like a big black magic marker. Wahoo, a lot of ways to fish Wahoo. I mean, Wahoo, and I'll talk about the more successful as far as the Caribbean, but your Wahoo are, people will live bait Wahoo. You could certainly accidentally catch them while you're fishing for kingfish. You could certainly put out small bullet bonitas and slow troll them. Most times Wahoo are caught, generally the best is usually around full moons. Full moons, you've got strong tides, especially on an outgoing tide. Outgoing tide pulls a lot of bait out to the ledges. The bait falls off the ledge. Where's my marker? I haven't used my marker in a while. I miss it. So tide coming out, and here's a good spot right here. Well, actually, this is a point, but pulls the bait off, and the bait drops off the ledges. So your Wahoo are going to stage along the ledge, and they're going to run back and forth. But the outgoing tide will pull your baits out of the shallows off the ledge. Full moon, the only reason I mention that is stronger tides pulls more bait. So Wahoo generally more low light. So your early morning and you're later in the evening. A lot of speed trolling involved in Wahoos along the ledges. So when you're pulling there, you can use downriggers, but the Caribbean in particular, a lot of people are using wireline. Wireline gets your bait down. Now you can use Yo-Zuri bonitas. You can pull heavy jets. But you want it to be a little bit down the surface, and you want to stagger your baits out where they're not, you don't want them crisscrossed, you want them staggered out. So you've got, if you've got a bait here, then you have a bait here, and you have a bait here, and you have a bait here. And of course, you can always put one down the shotgun, but 4 usually does it. Couple tricks on that is, again, in the Caribbean, you control 14 knots. Generally the speed is anywhere from 10 to 14, 10 to 12 seems great, 8 to 10 a little bit in Florida, but 10 to 12 is kind of a good speed. Lazy S's, usually better, like this. What that does, it'll drop your baits down in the water column and pop them back up at a lot higher speed, makes it a little more erratic. And with the slower troll, you're going to get slow to fast areas. It's going to pick up, it's going to slow down, pick up, slow down. So again, you're changing the speed of it. One of the things with Wahoo, especially in the Caribbean, when you hook one, keep trolling. A lot of times you'll end up, we had 4 on at one time. I was out there with my buddy Dave long ago. We hooked one, we kept trolling. We ended up, I forget if we were 4 for 4 or 3 for 4, but we had multiple runoffs. But fish the ledge. In this case here, we were fishing, I think we were 220 to 180, doing a slow, lazy ass. Speed trolling about 12 to 14. Heavy baits, because if you don't have heavy baits or drails, your baits are not going to stay underwater. So you've got to use something heavy, starting right in your prop wash, all the way out to twice the distance of your prop wash, and running heavy baits. Again, you can run it on mono, you can run it on braid, whatever you have, but a lot of guys will use wireline for that kind of speed trolling to get it deeper. But you can use braid, you can use mono, just use heavy drails. And of course, wire. Don't forget your wire. So let me just see if there's anything else real quick. It looks like I've answered most of the questions for the moment. Let's see if there's anything else I missed real quick. Oh, I didn't touch on snook. Very quickly on snook before I go. Snook, love current as well. They will certainly sit in troughs close to the mangroves. This time of year in the summertime, inlets are key. Fishing around inlets where you've got a deeper trough. On the flats, you're looking for potholes. You're looking along the edges of mangroves. A lot of the big snook will run up shallow, not too far off from where your redfish are. They'll sit along the edge of the mangroves. They'll get up in the creeks if you want to catch little juveniles. But the inlets this time of year are excellent. Docks, snook are like just a big largemouth bass. I hate to compare it to that. I mean, they certainly fight a lot harder, but they're very similar to that, and they like structure. They want to be by docks. They want to be by rocks. They want to be, starting to sound like Dr. Seuss, they want to be in some of the sloughs. But live bait is great when they're in the inlets. You get outside of the inlets. Any kind of top waters work great. Fishing around bridges. Bridges are structure. Mullet run especially. They love bridges around the mullet run. So look for that. But look for, your drops. So let's see if I can give you one real quick. I'm going to run out of time here on my webinar. But look for shorelines that have some kind of a trough. We talked about fish highways. Look for that trough. The trough is going to help you as far as, where the snook are going to hang. They're an ambush predator. They're looking for, a place to hide and something to come up and eat those baits. They do like oyster bars, and they also like where, you've got maybe 2 oyster bars next to each other and a trough that runs through. We looked at a lot of other fish that will sit in that trough. When bait comes through, they attack it. Again, that's really for any kind of a fish. Where can the current bring the bait, and where can I sit to use the least amount of energy with the maximum gain? And that's what you really have to look for on any fish. I think that might be about all the time we have. Let me quick take a look, see if there's anything quick. That looks like about it. So I still got quite a few people left. What I am going to say before I close out for the day here is, hey, there's the end of my PowerPoint. That's not what I was going to say. Let's get all the way to the bottom here. Go to the end. It's just a simple thank you for your attending. If you want to find out more about webinars, you can sign up at navionics.com or join our mailing list. Bass Pro will continue. I'm going to have a discussion with them to promote these as well. It's also on their OneSource page. So with that, if I did not answer questions, I will do the best that I can in taking a look at questions that I missed and emailing directly to you. This is, again, on being recorded. This will be on the Navionics website. Give us a few days to post it under our webinars. And it'll also be on Bass Pro's OneSource. Quick question popped up. Okay, thank you for all the thank yous. I appreciate it. Again, Good fishing out there. Hope this helped. Feel free to refer back to it anytime, and I'm sure we'll do more in the future. Have a good night, everybody, and catch them up.